Hi everyone, this is Ashley Wilson from How's It Look, and tonight I'm going to be covering 10 lessons that I've learned over the past 4 years of flipping houses. So we'll give everyone maybe another 30 seconds and then we'll get started here with all of the lessons that we've learned, all of the mistakes we've learned. So hopefully you don't have to make those same mistakes. So I'm just going to take a look and see who is joining us right now while we give a couple people some more time to join. I see that Justin B just closed on first 2 single family rental properties using the BRRRR strategy. Congratulations, Justin. That's awesome. It seems like we have some people here from Florida and Oregon and Des Moines, which is awesome. Let's see what else we have. All right, let me see here. We have, Derek Taylor. How's It Look is the name of our company. Excuse me. So that's actually a name. Sorry, I just have to take a sip of juice here to clear my throat. That's a name that my mom came up with. I think it's pretty creative and it's pretty catchy. So if you have yet to come up with a name for your flipping company or whatever real estate company you have, make sure it's catchy because it's definitely has worked in our favor. People remember it, and then if they have the property, it's an easy name to think of when they think of someone who might be interested in purchasing it. So that has worked out really well. From Connecticut, we see is someone's here. All right, so let's get started. There have been a lot of lessons that we have learned over the past 4 years flipping houses in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm going to just share 10 of those lessons with you that we have learned. Hopefully you will not make the same mistakes that we have made, and hopefully this will propel your business to the next level. These tips are for people who are just getting started in flipping, to people who have been in flipping for a few years, or anywhere in between. So please don't think this is just for newbies, and for people that are newbies, don't think that this is just tips that are for people that have a well-oiled machine. These are tips across the 4 years of mistakes that we have made and how we've overcome those hurdles. So let's start with the first one, and this would be our first property. Our first property we purchased for $83,000, and we ended up selling it for $296,000. That looks like a great profit margin, but the renovation budget was a 6-figure renovation. So when you add on the holding costs and everything, it adds up really quickly. For anyone who's new to flipping, there are a lot of costs that people do not consider. For example, purchase cost, holding cost, and selling cost. Those are 3 major categories in which those costs get attributed. So your profit can be eaten up really quickly. Another reason your profit can be eaten up really quickly, and this is tip number 1, is accounting for purchasing properties on busy streets. Properties that you purchase on busy streets have a double whammy. They affect your sale price and they affect your time on market. That's because it takes a certain type of buyer to want to live on a busy street. And I've been asked before, what percentage can I equate with buying, or the impact that it has on selling a property on a busy street? And to be perfectly honest, I think it varies based on 2 factors: the price point and the expectation of the clientele that's purchasing in that area. In a very condensed area where properties are more likely to be on busy streets, it might have less of an impact, whereas if it was in a more rural area and all of a sudden you have a property on a busy street. So definitely take that into consideration when you're purchasing a property on a busy street. Regardless of the demographic, there will always be an impact to buying a property on a busy street. The second lesson learned, also we learned this from our first flip, was doing the work yourself. So we did a lot of the renovation ourselves on our first flip. And what we learned during that process, and we highly recommend, is not only did we learn the process of the actual tasks we are completing, we learned the order of operations, which is paramount in streamlining your business. That's a tip later on that I'll get to, but I'm just hinting at it at this point. But the other thing is you learn the value of the work you're doing. So when you are getting estimates in the future for that same work, you know what that work should equate to because you can drill it down to an hourly rate. And last but not least, it gives you the option to perform that activity if you are tight on budget or tight on timeline and you need to pitch in a helping hand to get that project on market. So a good example, and I often get made fun of constantly bringing up this example, but it's a really good example, in my opinion, is tiling. Tiling is a very expensive trade to pay someone. However, it is a trade that is something that you can easily learn. And if you are over budget or not only over budget, but over your timeline in the project, you can step in and perform tiling, installation of tiling, and it can allow you some extra room on the profit side so you don't end up in that unfortunate situation of a loss on a flip. So I would highly advise learning some skill sets. Of course, you cannot perform all of the work on a flip. One, because you're just one person, but two, also because a lot of the trades require you to be licensed, certified, and due to inspections and also, safety and liability concerns for yourself, you should outsource a lot of that work. So don't think I'm saying that you should all of a sudden start rewiring a house, because that's not what I'm saying. The third tip is to make sure that you follow up with realtors often. So a quick little story, we purchased a property after putting several offers on the property over the course of several months, just because we continue to follow up with the realtor very often to figure out if the seller had any change of heart in terms of accepting our offer. What was interesting on our follow-up is that it was a house that had a failed septic, and the septic actually got repaired or replaced. I forget what they actually did. This was several years back. However, the listing agent never updated it in the listing. So we found out about it before anyone else. It was never updated in the listing. So we placed an offer. We increased our offer by a little bit because previously we were accounting for the fact that we would have to replace the septic, but they replaced it instead. And all of a sudden we were able to get this house because the seller kept seeing us offer X amount of dollars, and all of a sudden we upped our offer, and they had just replaced the septic and had paid a significant amount of money to have this septic replaced. And here they had a higher offer and they just wanted to get rid of the property. So there is another tip to make sure that you constantly follow up with a realtor. Just because the seller does not accept the offer that you make, that does not mean that the deal is over. The deal is only over once that property is sold to someone else. And even in that situation, it could be sold to someone who ends up wholesaling it, or someone who doesn't want the property. So it's never over until it's over. So just keep that in mind. Tip number 4 is a lesson we learned kind of the hard way. I guess we made out well in the end, but it's definitely a lesson we learned, funny lesson. So we had a property that we thought friends of my parents would be a perfect fit for the property. They expressed a lot of interest in the property when we first purchased the property, and seeing that they were lifetime family friends of my parents, and they knew all of the construction work that my dad had been doing, that they were very accustomed to walking through a house that was under rehab and could see the vision that we were designing and aiming to achieve. They were interested in the property very early on, and we contemplated about not letting them in until the property was closer to being finished, but they insisted that they could see past, the rehab and be able to visualize it being finished. They couldn't. So they actually decided not to pursue the house until about a week and a half before we put the property on the market. They saw pictures of the property getting close to being final and being listed on the market, and they asked if we would hold off putting on the market until they could fly back in and look at the property again, and they live there today. So that shows you that you should never let a potential buyer in to a property until it is very close to finish, if not finished, because there are very few people who are able to see a finished product when it's under renovation. So we could have lost a deal, we could have lost a sale that way, and I don't want you to lose a sale that way. So make sure you do not let someone in. I know it's exciting to say you sold the property before it hit the market, but that could also be the day before you put it on the market too. You can still make that claim, and at least you'll have the property under contract and not run the risk of losing that potential buyer. Tip number 5 is about talking to the neighbors, especially when you have a twin house. So I know a lot of people are, I would say, hesitant to purchase a twin because there is a challenge to reselling the property if the other half of the twin is not in the same shape and condition as your property. We've purchased several twins, and one of the twins that we've purchased, we actually built into the budget that we would pay to have the front of their side painted. Now, obviously, we didn't tell them that. We approached them and we asked them if they wanted to have the front of their property painted when we were having our property painted, and we would talk to our painters to give them the same rate that they would give us. So it would be at a discounted rate. They actually just agreed to it from the start. So we never even had to offer to pay for their half, which we would have done, to be perfectly honest. But it was something that we built into the budget, and all it took was us establishing a relationship with that neighbor to be able to achieve the desired result, which is having a beautiful frontage on not only our property, but the adjacent property, to give off the impression to a potential buyer that the neighbor was also concerned about the aesthetics of the house, and it was going to be a good neighbor that kept up on their property. So make sure that you talk to your neighbors, and this doesn't even apply to twin houses. We always go into a neighborhood and we talk to the neighbors in that neighborhood for a lot of different reasons. One is because we think that they're a great advertising force for us to spread the word that this property is going to be coming on the market. They'll normally talk to their friends and family members to talk about how a company has come in to renovate one of the houses in their neighborhood. Another reason too is most neighborhoods have similar floor layouts and footprints, and it allows us opportunity to go into the different houses within that neighborhood and see how they have designed that footprint or altered the footprint, and possibly those plans work within our own house, which we've actually incorporated several different design ideas into our own properties just because of talking to neighbors. So never underestimate the value of talking to a neighbor in one of your towns. Tip number 6 is the importance of streamlining. I mentioned this earlier that there is so this is a tip, sorry, I should back up a little bit. This is a tip for anyone who has been flipping for, a year or so, even less than that. If you've done at least one flip, you should always be working to streamline your flipping process. So for an example, we had 2 very similar houses. The first house we purchased needed the same amount of work, had the same scope of work as the third house we purchased, and the third house we purchased was literally a year to date from the first house we purchased. Well, the first house took us 9.5 months to renovate, and the third house took us 9.5 weeks to renovate. And that is all because we identified systems and streamlined our business to make sure that we were operating effectively. So one of the things I mentioned earlier on was the importance of doing the work yourself. By doing the work ourselves, we learn the process in which the projects need to flow. By streamlining that system, you are able to look at the process in its entirety and see what tasks are overlapping, what tasks can be eliminated, what tasks can be planned in advance to make sure that the property is always moving forward. So I would advise everyone to look at their business. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business for, you can always make your business run more efficiently. Even someone who's been in the business for 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't matter. There are always ways that you can improve your business, especially with the integration of technology. There are definitely improvements in technology daily that you can incorporate in your business. So I highly recommend that you do that as well. Tip number 7 is don't trust Zillow. A lot of people rely on Zillow as an indicator for the value of a home. And I can tell you that we have had homes that have sold way less than what Zillow said and way above what Zillow has projected. And that is not an indication of our work or the hotness of the market. It also had other properties in that area undervalued and overvalued. Zillow is not the end-all be-all of houses. You really need to understand how to do an evaluation for your property. You need to look at comparable sales. It doesn't matter what a house is listed for. It matters what it's sold for. You should always look too at time on market. Time on market can vary even by street in some areas. So it's really important that you recognize there are certain trends, and Zillow is not at the point of being able to capture all of those trends. So please don't trust Zillow and build your business on Zillow in its entirety. I mean, it's a great resource to start, but make sure you do your due diligence before making an offer on a property solely based off of the Zillow data. Number 8 is when you're working with a project manager, a general contractor, etc., when you're building out your team, you really want to ensure that the skill set and the level of project management experience an individual has is consistent or matches well with the project needs. So this is really important, especially when you're growing your business, that you don't bring on a inexperienced project manager and give them a full gut rehab. You really need to make sure that they can handle the project that you're giving them based off of their previous experience, and they don't feel overwhelmed by the project you're handing them. Most contractors, general contractors, and project managers, they may never have done a project from start to finish, but they may be able to tell you how to do every step of the project, but not in order. They've never had to really do that and think that in its entirety. So it's really important that if you have someone with a lot of experience, but never in the sense that they're coordinating all these tasks, it's important that the house that you give them maybe doesn't have that full scope from the beginning. Moving on to the next one is number 9, which is knowing one's capacity. So taking this one step further with working with your project manager, we had a situation in which we were short on houses, and we thought we're just going to go out and make a ton of offers because if we make 8 offers in 1 week, that'll yield us 1 house. Well, we did that and it yielded us 4 houses. It was a good problem to have at the time. Well, so we thought, but then what we realized is we didn't have the bandwidth in which to execute those projects. So if we had better understood our capacity, we had better analyzed the number of deals number of offerings we made, which equated to acquiring the property, I think we would have been in a better situation. Unfortunately, we got too many houses at one time. One of the houses sat for a really long time while we were juggling the other 3. And eventually we were able to sell that last house and we were able to come out with a profit, but the profit was a lot, lower than it should have been because we were unable to handle all of those projects going at the same time. And then last but not least, and this is hopefully a story that will encourage you all, whether you have been in the business for a month or for 10 years, always make an offer. You never know what a seller might accept. So if the property looks good and you're embarrassed by the offer price, still make the offer. You need to make an offer on what you feel comfortable with. And at the end of the day, if what you feel comfortable with is accepted, you'll never look back. There's a house that we were contacted about. It was listed on the market at $499, and it had been on the market for 5 days when I got a call from a realtor asking us to come over and take a look at this property. I pulled up the information while I was on the phone with her, and I said that I didn't think that this was a house that would be suited for us because when I was doing the numbers, it didn't look like there was a lot of room. At the time, comparable sales in that area were in the low 600s, and she was telling me that it needed all new wiring. It had radiator heat. There were some other issues with the property. It needed a new roof. It just looked like a huge project to undertake for a very small profit. So she insisted that I come look at the property. We came and looked at the property. And after looking at the property, I told her that I wouldn't be able to make an offer in the 4s, and I suggested to her that she drop the price. Instead, she asked me to make an offer. We went back and forth on whether or not we thought we should make an offer because we thought it might be embarrassing, the offer that we were going to make. But ultimately, we made an offer for $315 on day 7 that this house was on the market at $499. She accepted the offer. Well, the seller accepted the offer. We renovated the house, and ultimately, while we were renovating the house, we were very lucky because there were a couple properties that sold exceptionally high, and it changed the ARV over $100,000 more than what I had originally forecasted. We ultimately sold the property for $742. If I hadn't made an offer when we started, if I hadn't have made an offer when we started, I wouldn't be able to tell you this story, and I wouldn't be able to share with you the fact that you shouldn't be discouraged from making an offer in the future. You should really be confident about your numbers and make an offer that you feel works best for you. Just like while we had it, the property values in that area went up, they easily could have gone down. And we could have taken a home run deal and been in a lot of trouble. So if we had offered higher, You never know how much we could have lost. But this is a situation in which you should feel comfortable about what you want to offer and make sure you always throw out an offer because you never know. Yes, Cole, I know. I'm struggling here. Okay. So let's see if we have any questions. I hope you like the 10 tips that that I have for you tonight. I hope it makes an impact on your business. Starting tomorrow, you could implement all of these tips. I really think that these tips have taken our business to another level because of the mistakes that we've made and that we've learned from. One question from Cole is, how long do your houses usually sit on the market before going under contract? A few years ago, I would say that they were sitting for, sometimes they would sell within a couple days, maybe a week or two, but definitely less than a month. Recently, we also started doing higher end flips. Higher end properties in general tend to sit on the market longer. But coupled with where we are in the market cycle, properties are sitting on the market longer. So there are properties now sitting for 30 to 90 days that we have. But interestingly enough, we're still getting close to ask, which is kind of crazy. Sarah Taylor asks, do we hire a realtor to list them or do we sell for sale by owner? My husband actually serves as a realtor. He's with HomeSmart. I highly recommend HomeSmart because they are a company in which the realtor gets the commission as opposed to the brokerage. It's a flat fee service. HomeSmart's really taking off by storm. It's really up to you what you think is the best fit for you. But for someone like us, where my husband is not selling retail real estate, he's just working for us. It was a perfect fit for us. But I do know other agents that work within HomeSmart that do a lot of transactions on the retail side. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Just want to try to get to everyone here. Okay. Oh, wow, we have a lot of questions. Okay. The name of our business is How's It Look? We have a website, howsitlook.com. You can check out some of the properties that we've done. And my name is Ashley Wilson, in case you joined us late. Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions. Kimberly Smith, was it a cash offer? Is that what, excuse me, made it attractive to the seller? It was not I guess it was considered a cash offer, but it's not a cash offer. It was a no contingency offer. So a lot of the offers that are made, people put contingencies in, for example, a mortgage or an inspection. They can write in whatever they want as a contingency. We actually write offers up with no contingencies. We're in a very competitive area in which there are a lot of people renovating homes, and houses that are renovations tend to go very quickly in our area. So one of the ways we've been a little bit more competitive, because our renovation costs are really high and we normally aren't competitive in that aspect, is through making no contingency offers. Okay. So the total profit on our lucky offer house was over $100,000. It's definitely been one of the better profits that we've made. That was a question by Forest Green. Okay, one of the questions is how to flip with no money. There are a lot of ways that you can access money. You can partner with people who have money. You can use hard money lenders, and you'll have to pay to use the money, and there's higher interest rates, but it's a great way to get started. Another great tip for low to no money down is, I don't know if everyone's aware, but there are approximately 34% of Americans who have no mortgage on their property, which means that there's roughly a third of sellers who are selling their houses that could potentially do seller financing. So seller financing is when the seller acts as the bank. So you can actually pay the seller your mortgage payment, so to speak. So you're paying down the price of the house coupled with interest. It's a little bit more challenging to find someone who will take up that offer because sometimes they need the money in the house to purchase another property, but there are occasions in which this works. So that's another area or opportunity that you can find to purchase a house with no money down. All right, let's see. Okay. Another question, from KMom23, do you have plans for when the market takes an even further dip? Do you factor in a 2008 crash? Yes, we do have other plans. One of our other business is apartment syndication. That company is called Bardown Investments. You can also check us out at investbardown.com. So that's investing in multifamily apartment buildings. But in addition to that, with flipping, that's another reason that I think that you should be very confident with the offer that you make and make sure that you're going after properties that you think have multiple exit strategies. What I mean by that is you want to make sure that in the unfortunate case that you won't be able to sell the property, that you could potentially rent the property or do some other creative investing strategy, whether you can live in the property while you go through the market correction, and then you actually aren't paying capital gains on the profit you're making anyway if you live in the property for over 2 years. So that might be advantageous as well. So we do have some other plans in place in preparation for market correction. If anyone is following the market, we are overdue for a market correction, so it will be coming any day now. So it's really important that when you are investing, you're investing conservatively at this point in the market cycle. Okay, so Dimitri asked a question about what our formula is for determining purchase price. I actually do not use the 70% rule out of all of the properties that we have purchased, even with the lowball offers that we've placed. Based on the final numbers that come in through the renovation and our holding costs and purchasing costs and selling costs, we would, by the 70% rule, we would not or should not have purchased any of those properties. Shockingly enough, right? I just told you that we made 6 figures in profit on one of these properties, and the 70% rule would have told us not to purchase the property at that price. I think the 70% rule is good for properties at a certain price point, but they are not, it's not equatable for the properties that we're pursuing. So just make sure that you really understand the numbers behind everything and don't just assume that that 70% rule is going to lead you in the right direction. I mean, the 70% rule is definitely conservative because obviously if we should have been purchasing these properties at a lower price, we obviously would have made more money. But in the same token, we may not have even been able to acquire them. Okay. How's it look is spelled house, HOUSEITLOOK. It's a play on words. Okay, let's see. Another question from Forest Green. So what profit must you predict to execute a property? For every person, this answer is going to be different. We do this as a full-time business, and we have done this as a full-time business for several years now. And in order to do it and run it as a full-time business, we need to make a certain amount of profit based on the time spent in the property as well as the money that we're putting into the property. So it's not a very simple equation for me to tell you straightforward, oh, it's X amount or X percentage. It's actually a formula that I use to determine whether or not it's worth our time and also our financial investment. That's something that I recommend that everyone do to know, for example, like your freedom number, your number in which you can quit your job and do real estate investing full time and then work backwards from there. So it doesn't need to necessarily be in the first year that you make, let's say you make $50,000 in the first year. It doesn't necessarily need to be that you have to make that in the first year, but you should be able to see the vision as to in year one, I'm going to make 20,000. In year two, I'll make 35,000. In year three, I'll make 50,000. And that's the number I need to retire. So ultimately my goal is to retire from my job in 3 years and do this full time. Do I suggest purchasing homes from auctions? We actually did purchase a home from an auction. It was an exhausting process. It takes someone who has a lot of patience, and also it takes a lot of time. So if you're doing this full time, I don't recommend solely purchasing from auctions because you never know when that property will actually close. If you're relying on the income that you make just solely from the resale of a property, this could cause a huge hiccup in your income. So it's not a reliable source of income, in my opinion. I mean, flipping's already inconsistent. You don't need to add another inconsistency. However, I do think it's a good mix to add when you're doing other properties in addition to auctions. If you're talking now about sheriff sales, you can pick up properties fairly cheaply, but you really need to know what you're doing there because you don't have the ability to really vet the property well, get inside the property like you do on some auctions. Not all auctions you can get in on the property, but in the ones that we have either bid on and or won have been properties in which we could actually get into. Okay. Jarrett, your question, do we focus on single family or multifamily? We actually do both. We flip single family homes, and I like to say we flip on steroids multifamily homes, but we do value add apartment building projects. What do I think about apartment investing? I love apartment investing. To Lloyd's question, what are the project timelines on average? The project timelines vary. If it's a cosmetic flip, we like to be in and out of the property, meaning the full renovation in less than a month, anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. If it's a full gut rehab, our goal is 9.5 weeks, but sometimes it can extend to 3 months. A full gut rehab includes all new wiring, all new plumbing, all new electric, changing of floor plan, new flooring, new roof, new siding. I mean, soup to nuts we do. So it's basically like rebuilding an entire house. So I just answered that question. How long are we holding a house for before it's flipped? On the one end of the spectrum, it can be around 3 months, and on the other end, if it's a cosmetic, anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Therefore we normally have to make payments on the money that we're borrowing due to that hold period. This is an excellent question. My real estate agent doesn't allow me to make lowball offers. Any tips? Get a new real estate agent. You are working with the wrong real estate agent. That real estate agent should be your biggest advocate for someone not to pay over what you feel comfortable paying. Because at the end of the day, if you're profitable, your real estate agent is profitable. If you are not profitable, your real estate agent is really very short-sighted and only looking at one property. Get another real estate agent tomorrow. Get out of the contract with your real estate agent and do not work with that real estate agent anymore. What is your take on the 10% return of investment? Once again, I think this is definitely something that's a little bit more complicated than standard formulas. I'm not a standard formula type of person. I think that there's more to simplifying something to capture whether or not a deal is a good deal. So I like to think of a lot of different components when we're deciding whether to invest in a property or purchase a property. So time in is a huge factor, and also the cost of the money, how long the project's going to be, how long the hold period's going to be, to figure out whether or not that's a good investment. To me, by just going based off of your returns, you're not putting and capitalizing on the fact that time is money. And if you don't understand that concept, then you really can't take your business to the next level. So I don't like to focus on just the return of your investment, but I also like to equate it as to the return on your investment, with the caveat that there's a time component in that equation as well. Why are we flipping in Philly? We're located in the suburbs of Philadelphia. We actually don't go into Philadelphia. We flip in bordering neighborhoods outside of Philadelphia. Is buying a foreclosed home risky? It depends. We have bought several foreclosed properties. But, once again, you need to know what you're doing, have an experienced real estate investor to help you through the process, and make sure that the home is a good fit for you too, because typically foreclosed properties tend to require a little bit more work. Have we ever personally wholesaled? No, we have not personally wholesaled before, but we have purchased property from a wholesaler. How do we structure borrowing money? It is per house. So we're fortunate in that sense that we are able to do that. So just switching over, I see a few other questions over here. So I just want to check with some of the questions on Facebook, and then I'll let everyone go because I know that we are going way over time, but I just see that we have probably the most amount of questions that I've gotten on any of these feeds. So I just want to make sure that I try to answer everyone's questions. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. For Chris's question, do we target specific ARV prices on our flips? Previously, we were doing higher end flips, so we were doing anything from $800,000 to over $1 million. Now we've done properties that have ARVs in the 200 range too, so I don't want to say that our properties are solely in that 800 to over $1 million range. With the market in the cycle that we're at, the point in which we're in the cycle, we're scaling back not in terms of the purchasing, how many properties we're purchasing, but the ARVs. So we definitely want to stay below 800. We don't want to go above 800. So in other words, we don't want to go above our minimum, or where our minimum was previously. We want to stay below that comfortably. I think below 700. There is some discussion there amongst our team, but I think it's best to stay below 700 as well. Okay, so let's see some other questions here. Sorry, Facebook questions are popping up so quickly. I keep losing my spot. Do you feel comfortable with higher rehabs? I just answered this question about higher rehabs, so I'll skip over that one. Okay. For gut rehabs, you need permits from the city to do a full gut. You should always check with the city to know what requirements are needed per each township, and make sure you follow them to a T. Don't take any shortcuts ever. How can we be reached? We can be reached by sending an inquiry through our website, howsitlook.com, or you can also email at howsitlook@gmail.com. Jeffrey King, you're a general contractor and ready to flip. What advice would you give? Partner up. I think the more people that you have supporting you in the beginning, the better off you are. I know some GCs like to go about it alone, but there's a lot of administrative work that typical GCs, just my experience, GCs aren't typically people who enjoy doing paperwork. So if you find someone who enjoys doing paperwork who's looking for a GC, you can partner up and you can actually accomplish so much more, because you can have a checks and balance between the administrative side, running the numbers, finding the deals, and the actual execution of running the project. That's how my father and I operate. We actually started this business as a partnership and it's grown from there. But my dad has served as the boots on the ground at these properties, and then I have handled anything else that you can handle remotely. So that's been very successful for us, and then that's what I would obviously recommend to you. So with that, I'm going to conclude for tonight. It's way over what we normally like to do. We normally like to keep this to half an hour. But I just really want to thank everyone for being really active tonight and asking some tremendous questions. I mean, the questions tonight were definitely the best questions that I've received, and I've been doing this now for several months. I think that you can really tell the people that have listened to or that are on this call tonight are either, just starting out, but I can tell you're knocking on the door, you're ready to get your first deal. Or there are some, based on the questions, there are a lot of people I can tell that have already done their first deal and really hungry to keep going and building that business. So please remember the tips that I mentioned tonight. And I hope you've learned from our mistakes so you don't make these same mistakes that we've made, and you can grow even faster than we've been able to grow. I wish everyone the best of luck. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you tune in next Tuesday night, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again. Have a good night.